I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, April the 21st, 2015. The Palestinian driver whose car rammed into two pedestrians in Jerusalem last week admitted that he did so intentionally. 25-year-old Shalom Yochai Sherki was killed and a 20-year-old woman was seriously wounded when 37-year-old Khaled Koutene ran into them waiting at a bus stop in the French Hill neighborhood in Jerusalem last Wednesday. According to Israeli authorities, Koutene now admits he was intent on, quote, seeking out Jews to murder. Argentine federal prosecutor Javier De Luca dismissed allegations against President Cristina Fernandez yesterday regarding her alleged cover-up of the involvement of Iran in the bombing of the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires in 1994 that left 85 people dead and hundreds injured. Allegations were originally made by the late special prosecutor Alberto Nisman, who was found dead of a gunshot wound to the head in January, the day before he was set to testify about his findings. Nisman, who was Jewish, is thought by many to have been murdered. De Luca was assigned by Argentina's top appeals court after the case was rejected by a lower court in February. He said yesterday regarding the cover-up claims against Fernandez that there had been no crime. A delegation of 10 chief rabbis from Europe met yesterday with the Pope at the Vatican to address the alarming rise in anti-Semitism across the region. Pope Francis addressed what he called the troubling anti-Semitic trends in the area and said that every Christian must, quote, be firm in deploring all forms of anti-Semitism and in showing their solidarity with the Jewish people. The Anti-Defamation League commended the pontiff for his consistent stand against anti-Semitism. Its director of Interfaith Affairs, Rabbi David Sandmel, said, as we see anti-Semitism, religious hatred, and violence increasing in the world, the strong stance of the Pope and his willingness to make his voice heard are both essential and most welcome. The trial against former Auschwitz guard Oskar Groening began today in Germany, and the now 93-year-old asked for forgiveness. Groening faces 300,000 counts of accessory to murder. He told the District Court of Lüneburg today, "For me, there is no question that I made myself morally complicit." Groening told the court he'd learned about the gas chambers as soon as he got to Auschwitz in 1942. He served as accountant for the death camp, collecting money and valuables found in the suitcases of murdered Jews. Groening said, "I beg for forgiveness," adding, "When it comes to the question of criminal guilt, you must decide." Groening maintains he was not involved in any killing at Auschwitz. However, German prosecutors argue that anyone who was a death camp guard can be charged as an accessory to murders committed there. 16-year-old Palestinian teenager Mohammed Abu Kader, who was murdered last summer by 3 Jewish Israelis, has been added to the list of names that appears on the memorial plaque on Mount Herzl, commemorating the civilians who died in terrorist attacks this past year. As you may recall, Abu Kader was burned to death in a revenge attack following the kidnapping and murder of the 3 Israeli teenage yeshiva students near Hebron last year, Gilad Shar, Eyal Yifrach, and Naftali Frankel. Israel's defense ministry recognized the Palestinian teen as a victim of hostile action last year after the indictment of the 3 Israeli men suspected of carrying out the murder, which grants Abu Kader's family the same compensation rights as those of victims of Arab terror, and adds his name to the official state website listing terror victims in Israel. And this evening, the State of Israel will mark Yom HaZikaron, or Memorial Day, recognizing the 23,320 soldiers who have fallen since pre-state Israel, as well as civilian victims of terror. 116 IDF soldiers and civilians were killed or died in the last year, including 67 soldiers and 5 civilians killed during Israel's Operation Protective Edge in Gaza last summer. Yom HaZikaron begins with a minute-long siren tonight in Israel. A second siren of 2 minutes will sound tomorrow morning, Wednesday at 11 a.m. local time. After lighting a virtual candle on his ministry's website, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon wrote that the Israeli nation, as one big family, bows its head and unites with the memories of all the fallen of Israel's wars as a moral obligation to those who in their death commanded us to live. Yom HaZikaron ends tomorrow, Wednesday night, marking the transition from mourning to celebration with the beginning of Yom HaAtzmaut. Tomorrow night, Israel's Independence Day. And JBS will have special programming for Yom HaZikaron as well as Yom HaAtzmaut throughout the week, including tonight at 7:30, 2 Israeli soldiers on active duty, including Captain Netta Gary, who flies for the Israel Air Force, talk about the ethical standards of the IDF. At 8, Israel's successes and challenges are discussed by former Israeli Knesset member Natan Sharansky, Jewish historian Michael Oren, American intellectual Leon Wieseltier, and Israeli law professor Ruth Gavison. Then at 9, Esther Waxman, mother of kidnapped and murdered IDF soldier Nachshon, talks about her experience and the painful dilemma of trading imprisoned Palestinians for kidnapped soldiers. And at 10, Robi Damelin, whose IDF soldier son was murdered by a terrorist sniper, co-founder of the Parent Circle, talks about her work to bring bereaved Palestinian and Israeli families together in reconciliation. And stay tuned for a new segment of In the News coming up right after this newscast tonight on JBS and jbstv.org. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, April the 21st, 2015. I'm Teisha Bader.